All right, we're going to get started, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Kate Matthews-Bray, and I'm the Director of Alumni Engagement here at NJIT. Thank you for joining us for the second session of the Highlander Alumni Personal Growth Fall Series. I'm excited to welcome you to this afternoon's session, which focuses on leveraging the two dimensions of time. The Highlander Alumni Personal Growth Series focuses on lifelong learning, self-discovery, and skill development for individuals to achieve their full potential. Our goal through the series is to inspire and guide participants on their journey of continuous personal growth, equipping them with the tools, mindset, and strategies to thrive both in professional and personal aspects of their lives. This is a three-part series that will take place virtually once a month until December. So before we jump in, I just want to share some housekeeping rules of how this afternoon will go. When you entered, your microphones were muted, and we kindly ask that you keep them muted throughout the presentation. We want this session to be interactive, and there will be times when you'll have a chance to ask questions or share comments, and we'll let you know when those happen. You're welcome to either keep your video off or on. It's whatever you feel most comfortable. And please feel free throughout the session to type questions or comments in the chat box. We'll take some time at the end to answer them. And lastly, this session will be recorded and available on demand via YouTube. It is now my absolute pleasure to invite my colleague and friend to present this wonderful topic. So Dr. Michael Edvinson, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Kate. Kate's such a great collaborator and dear friend. And good afternoon, everyone. I hope everyone's having a good day. It's an absolute honor to support the NJIT alumni. And this is, every time I do these talks, I'm like, this is my favorite topic. But this really is one of my most absolute favorite topics. Chronos and Kairos, we get to spend, 45, 50 minutes talking about time, and it's just something we rarely do. So as Kate said, this is being recorded, but also I did want to remind you, we do have the third one, December 18th, same time at 12 o'clock. That's entitled Acknowledge Your Perception to Appreciate Perspective. And a lot of fun topics. The last one we looked at, there's some Olympic champions and some lessons about wants and needs. Our focus today is time. And then in December, we're looking at perception and perspective and why it's critical to your success to understand the difference. I do just want to give a 30-second commercial. I am the Associate Provost for Continued Learning. We have a new initiative at NJIT. It is 7 months old now. It is known as the LDI, or Learning and Development Initiative. We connect people to the skills and knowledge they need to succeed. We do that by offering skills-based learning non-degree credentials. We provide courses, webinars. We have events. We have an event coming up December 11th, AI in Education at the Mercer County College Conference Center. If you're interested, you can send me an email, and if you follow me on LinkedIn, I posted the registration page today. We do custom training. So for example, if you're interested in having us come to your organization, your company, your nonprofit, we do training on site. We actually have people on campus to do training for their organizations. And we do workforce development programs. So it's a 7-month-old initiative. If you go to ldi.njit.edu, you can learn more about us. So new, we're still building out the website. And so again, we're all about connecting people to the skills and knowledge you need to succeed in this world, right? It just constantly changes. So this, if you've been a part of my presentations before, some of these early slides are going to look familiar. I always recommend that you have pen and paper. I will ask you questions. I cannot see the chat. So as Kate said, please type in your question in the chat so that we capture it. You can also hold it at the end. I always provide time and an opportunity to have a conversation at the end about anything that we looked at. And there's always the concept of, some of this may be uncomfortable for some people. A lot of the topics, they deal with not just personal growth, but also professional development, and there is an overlap between the two. So I've been talking about these things for, I don't know, close to 20 years now. So I'm very comfortable with all this, but I have learned over time just to put that word of caution in that some of this stuff may be uncomfortable. So again, you should have something to write with and on. That'd be most helpful. I've added this in recently. We're looking at something today that will require hard work, but more importantly, it's going to require you to work hard at the hard work. This is like an intro to Chronos and Kairos. And to really, dig deep down into your relationship with these two, it would take more than, a 45-minute, 50-minute, presentation. But that's okay because we always have to start somewhere. And I'll give you resources and books to read, and links to follow. And at the end, I will give you my email and LinkedIn profile. If we're not already connected, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I've had lots of conversations with NJIT alumni after the fact. I'd be happy to talk with you about any of the topics here. But I do just want to acknowledge to everyone that this topic, this understanding the dynamics of time, it does require you to work hard at hard work. It's not something that's done in and out in 45 minutes. Just again, another final warning that some of the topics may be sensitive. So just I want to reiterate that. So my ninth book is coming out by Business Experts Press in, I think, March or April. I'm working through the copy edited files now with my publisher. And it's entitled Achieving Productivity, 24 Essential Skills for Highly Productive Teams. These are the 24 essential skills. We're talking about one of those skills today and doing so only briefly, right? So essential skills link your personal growth with your professional development. There's an overlap there. They also link soft skills to hard skills. You're probably familiar with soft skills like time management, like, showing up on time, dressing appropriately, following orders, working independently, working with people different than you. And then your hard skills, right? It's your software skills, it's your, web design skills, foreign language skills. But there's an overlap there that connects the two. And it's these essential skills that drive your ability to move forward. I have said for decades now, if you want to grow as a professional, you have to grow as a person. And, I've been working for 30 years. I've seen lots of people grow in an organization, and I've seen people get stuck in an organization, and I've seen people just be afraid of their own shadow and not even want to move up at all in their organization. And what I have learned is that the people that understand that concept, that if you want to grow as a professional, you have to grow as a person, they generally do the work required to grow as a person so that they can grow as a professional. And it takes a lot of self-awareness. So we're going to just look into one aspect of that today. So when we think of time, right, there's a general understanding that this is our interpretation of time. And in the West, United States, in the West, you asked, 10 people about time, they're going to say, oh, well, what you need, time of day? And this is easily like the most basic interpretation of time. And like, for example, this presentation is from 12 noon to 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on whatever today's date is, Wednesday, November 13th. So that's time as we generally know it. Now, there's all kinds of, we're going to talk about this, techniques for time management, but every single time management workshop, except for mine, except for this one, they ignore the Eastern version of time. And that is known as Kairos. And we're going to look at this in great detail now in the next few minutes. There is no word in the English language for Kairos. The best example I can give you that I want you to keep in the back of your mind is the person pulling back the bow. When do you release it? When is it appropriate? When is it the right time to release the arrow? That is Kairos. And that's what we're going to look about today. time as we understand it in the West and time as it is understood in the East, and one that after I get done with you, you will have an understanding of. It is this concept of time that people just so dreadfully mismanage, but they just don't really get it because no one's explained it to them. So Chronos and Kairos, right? Again, easily described in English. Chronos, chronology, right, time. We're going to look at these very closely. In Kairos, there is no one word in English that can describe it. You know, I used to be a certified yoga instructor, and then the pandemic hit, and I let the certification go. I was not going to teach yoga online. And to get my certification, I had to study Sanskrit. And, you know, you learn a lot of pretty cool words studying the ancient Indian language of Sanskrit, which is really hard. And there's a lot of times where there are certain words that just can't be described. So when you look at, you know, ancient Greek words, in this example, Sanskrit words, Latin words, there's sometimes it's not easily translatable. And Kairos is one of those words. And again, think of pulling back the arrow. When is the right time to let it go? That's Kairos. So let's just define these a little bit more granular so that we all are on the same page here. Chronos is about clock time. Again, what time is the meeting, all that, what time is the doctor's appointment, all that fun stuff. Kairos is deep time. There is no number associated with Kairos. I can't stress this enough. You're not organizing your day around deep time. You're organizing your life around deep time. And, you know, you organize your day around Chronos, right? I've already adjusted my day today 6 times because of the insanity of my job. And I'm sure all of you have insanity jobs, right? So clock time, we're constantly, you know, changing, adapting, adjusting, revising, updating. Do not get stuck in that Chronos as the only aspect of time, the only dynamic of time, the only opportunity of time. I want you to understand there is a whole other dimension of time now that you're going to become familiar with called Kairos, and that is deep time. So Chronos is measured in quantity, how many seconds, minutes, hours. Simple to understand. Kairos is quality of time. Quality of time, right? Like, and I open up, if you've heard me talk, I overshare, but I'm very comfortable sharing. You know, my mother passed away 2 years ago, and I made her a priority. My dad died, 8 years ago now, coming up on 9. And when he passed, I promised him that I would, you know, help take care of mom when he was gone. And I wanted to fulfill that promise to my dad. And I did with my sister's help. She was even more helpful than I was. And when the pandemic hit, you know, I was like, oh no, I have to like get to mom. Like she just needed all kind of help. And so I I'm a big selfie nerd. So I took all these selfies and I made a collage when mom passed. And what that reminded me was something really important. I couldn't tell you what time of day those photos were taken, and that exact time of day anyway. But I'll tell you what, when I look at that collage now, that is deep quality time I spent with my mother. That's another good visualization. I'll try to give you as many as I can before she passed. I look at that collage, and again, for day of the week, I have no idea. Who cares? I don't know the day, could guess the time, doesn't matter. Because when I'm looking at that, I am reminded of the power of Kairos, the deep quality time, not the amount, not the amount. Again, Chronos is measured in minutes. Kairos is measured in moments. Again, spending time with mom every Saturday. We had a specific routine that we would do, right? We'd go to Chick-fil-A. We hung out with her friends there. We'd go to Wegmans. You know, initially she would come in with me and walk up and in the aisles. Like I understood, like this is Kairos. This is important to do. I don't know how many of you have children, or if you're caring for your parents, if you have partners, whatever the case is, those opportunities that you're spending with someone, that's known as Kairos. And if you can understand this, you can, I think, really enrich your life in a way that you couldn't before. Just if you were just looking at Chronos. Chronos is finite. There's a past, there's a present, and a future. Kairos, there is no limit. It's limitless. It's not measured. You don't measure it. There's no number. And I think, I've raised two children. They're both grown adults now. And there's no way to measure how many moments we spend. We just had dinner as a family this past weekend to celebrate my son's 30th birthday. And I don't know how much time we spent. I doesn't matter. But I know that, boy, I really felt like there was deep quality time. It was a loving moment and could have stayed there forever. I mean, because we're not measuring time. Chronos is time that we consume. I love this definition, this aspect of the definition. Kairos is time that consumes us. So one of the exercises you're going to do at the end of today is, well, what consumes you? Not how do you spend your time? No. What consumes you? Because there's a difference between the two. Chronos is sequential, self-explanatory, right? 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock. Kairos, there's no sequence to it. It's deep quality time that cannot be measured, that is limitless, that consumes us, right? You spend time with your child, you get lost. You don't know how much time you spend, right? There is no past, present, and future. It's that moment. It's the now that is limitless. Chronos is a daily reality for all of us. All of you had to make time for this workshop. Thank you for attending. Kairos is a spiritual, emotional, or human opportunity. It's a human opportunity to experience a deep moment of quality, deep time. And how many opportunities do you take? So now we're going to look at some examples. Chronos, again, self-explanatory. My appointment's at 9 a.m. You have 30 minutes for this presentation. I need 10 minutes of your time. How many times do you hear people say that? Hey, I just need 10 minutes of your time, and that becomes a half hour. And like for me, every morning I work out from 6 a.m. to 7 a.m. I know that's Chronos. I need to leverage Chronos so that I can make space for Kairos. It's one of the things we're going to talk about. So if you have a deep understanding of Kairos, if I can get through a clear, concise, and compelling definition today, you will be able to ask yourself and eventually answer, but first ask, at what point in time do you release the arrow? So what does that mean, Michael? Good question. When do you tell someone you love them? That's releasing the arrow. When do I stop tolerating being mistreated at work or in a relationship? The moment you say, hey, I don't want to be mistreated anymore, you've released the arrow. When do I take a chance on? What are you not taking a chance on? You've got to reflect. You got to look inside. You got to ask yourself, hey, I want to take a chance and go apply for that job or write a book or take dancing lessons. I don't know, whatever it is that you're not taking a chance on. When do I take a chance on? That's when you release the arrow, right? That's when you release the arrow. And that's very hard for humans to do. It's way easier on the left. Chronos, yeah, schedule time. Yeah, that's easy. The Kairos work is substantially more difficult to do, substantially. So now I'll just give you some characteristics as to why. Chronos, you might be organized. You might leverage all the latest technological advancements to organize your Chronos time. You might be able to prioritize. You might be able to adjust your priorities, all that. Congratulations. Fantastic. Wonderful. You might think, hey, I'm really good at time management. And if you're ever to sit down with me, I would say, well, let's look at how you spend your Kairos time. How do you spend Kairos time? Are you courageous? Are you comfortable with uncertainty? Do you have a high degree of self-awareness? What is your relationship with grit? Can you bounce back from, one failure after another? What's the old proverb? Fall down 7 times, get up 8. What is your relationship with that? It's great that you really manage time. Woohoo! Yeah, you're managing Chronos time. But what is your relationship with Kairos time? That's what I work on with people. And this is a 4-hour workshop. There'd be lots of different little exercises to do. There'd be small group activities. There'd be like a larger group activity, right? We would really dive deep into this. But again, the questions at the end will at least get you started. So let's take a look at some research here. I have some the latest research for you. This is global research. Countries from China, Mexico, South Korea, all the way down to Spain, France, and Italy. This is how people spend their time. Now it's Chronos time, P.S., Chronos time. Averages of minutes per day from time use diaries from people between 15 and 64. So you can see in China, there's 315 minutes of paid work. And then in Italy, it's 149 minutes. So you can see kind of some differences here. Sleep is everywhere between 8 to 9 hours for the most part. And then personal care, housework, education, and school, like all those little things are going to vary. But you see a lot of similarities, right? We know that humans generally spend time in leisure, listening to the TV or radio, eating, drinking, housework and shopping, sleeping, in school, or working. It's not complicated to study Chronos time. Here's the latest data. I mean, it's wildly simple to study Chronos time. Studying Kairos time is nearly impossible. And I have yet to find any research that does that to any substantial degree that I would feel like sharing. Another way of looking at Chronos time, however, this came out a couple years ago. And I just want to take a moment here because it leads into another component of Kairos. This is just for Americans, who Americans spend their time with by age. By age. Who Americans spend time with by age. And this was between 2009, 2019, right? If you look at 0 to 15 years of age, right, you're with your family. It's clearly you're a child. Hopefully you're not on your own. And then the older you get friends, you get coworkers, maybe you get a partner and you spend time with your partner. And the very top, the outlier here, the very top is people from 40 years of age onward spend the good bit of their day alone. Now, this is Chronos data, but this directly impacts their ability to practice Kairos time, to leverage Kairos time, because the majority of people are alone, period. Not alone, meaning they don't have anyone like to go home to. It's more than that. They're just alone. And I think that's really important to understand. And it directly impacts almost everything. And there is a national epidemic of loneliness. This is the data. This is what came out a few years ago. And then Vivek Murthy, who is the U.S. Attorney General right now, published last year an advisory on the epidemic of loneliness. He said, when I first took office as Surgeon General, I didn't view loneliness as a public health concern, but that was before I embarked on a cross-country listening tour where I heard stories from my fellow Americans that surprised me. People began to tell me they felt isolated, invisible, and insignificant. Even when they couldn't put their finger on the word lonely, time and again, people of all ages and socioeconomic backgrounds from every corner of the country would tell me, I have to shoulder all of life's burdens by myself, or if I disappear tomorrow, no one will even notice. So when I first stumbled upon this, I immediately thought of, well, how are these people who are lonely leveraging Kairos time? Are they even giving themselves the opportunity? My default is no, because unless someone explains Kairos time to you, you don't even know that it exists. Once you have heard of Kairos, and at the end of, my talk today, you now have, I think, a responsibility to yourself to ask yourself, all right, well, I know how to manage Chronos time, or at least I can improve it. How in the world am I leveraging Kairos time? And that's, I think, the more important question. And as Murthy said, it was a light bulb moment for me. Social disconnection was far more common than I had realized. In the literature, I found confirmation of what I was hearing. 1 in 2 adults in America reported experiencing loneliness, 50%. You walk down the street, past 10 people, 5 of them feel lonely. Now you have some really good information, and maybe when you can get an opportunity to talk to someone, you do it. But right, we have phones in our faces, we have earphones and headphones in our ears. We're walking around with blinders on and coverings over our ears. We can't see anyone and we don't hear anyone. I teach oral communication on Tuesday nights at NJIT. And there's no greater lover of technology than I. No one loves technology more than I. And I told them, first class, when you come into this room, all technology goes away. You will listen to each other for 2.5 hours, and everyone has to present every class. If you want to be a better presenter, you have to be a better listener. And it's an amazing transformation to see them just give up the technology for 2.5 hours and realize, oh, I really didn't have a good skill of listening. No. And I think the first step towards addressing this issue of isolation is just to see other people and to listen to them. A really good book to read here. I'll give you a few resources. Walking on Water, Reflections on Faith and Art by Madeline L'Engle. If you read A Wrinkle in Time, you know her. She's the author. She actually talks about Kairos, one of the few authors to do so. When she wrote, but being time, B-E, being time, is never wasted time. When we are being, not only are we collaborating with chronological time, but we are touching on Kairos and are freed from the normal restrictions of time. That is so important to understand. We're slaves to chronological time. But if you are aware of Kairos, right, you can break free from chronological time and say, no, I need a deep moment of Kairos time with my child, with my partner, boyfriend, girlfriend, grandparents, neighbor, coworker. It doesn't matter, right? You've got to be able to be freed from the normal restrictions of time. Now, if you hear that and don't know what Kairos is, it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't mean anything. But once you're familiar with Kairos, then you can say, oh, this is why I want to be freed from the normal restrictions of time. I don't have any deep time experience. And I got to get some. I got to get some. And you go out and you actually get it. You consciously, proactively go get it. So we want to look at some case studies of some people you may know, and then we're going to get into some questions. So Chris Gardner, I highly recommend you read this book, Start Where You Are. I use this in a couple of my talks only because he's got an amazing life story. This is really where you have the intersection of Kairos and Chronos. Chris was the subject of The Pursuit of Happiness. Will Smith was in that movie with little Will Smith, his child. He portrayed Chris Gardner in the movie. Chris was a salesman, down and out on his luck. Wife left him, didn't have any money, couldn't pay his parking tickets, homeless. It was just everything was going the wrong way. One day he saw a stockbroker going into a building, coming out of a nice car, and Chris is on the steps, and he said, hey, well, what do you do? And the guy said, oh, I'm a stockbroker. And long story short, if you've seen the movie, you kind of get the gist of it, right? Chris actually gets an internship. It's an unpaid internship, and then is offered a job. So he completely turns his life around, and he becomes a multimillionaire. He's written several books. This is my favorite book of his. So if you notice on this cover, and I blew up the picture, he has a watch on both wrists. And I think it's on page 186, the way he tells you why. And I was like, well, why is this guy, why has he got, a watch on both wrists? So early in his career, he was late one day to a potential client meeting. It was someone he was going to meet to see if they wanted to give him some money and he could manage the portfolio. And he was late. And the gentleman said, Chris, if I can't trust you to show up on time, how can I trust you with my money? And Chris said, you're right. And from that point onward, he wore a watch on both wrists to remind him that of the intersection of Kairos and Chronos. He was given an opportunity that is known as Kairos to impress a potential client. It was a moment of deep time with a stranger. They're rare. And he failed. He failed to manage his Chronos, and as a result, didn't get that business. Luckily for him, he had a lot of other opportunities. And I really was impressed by his openness. And he said, yeah, it was my fault. He didn't cry. He didn't blame traffic. He didn't talk about how his son, needed some attention. No, none of the excuses you hear today. No, you're right. I was late. My bad. You're right. You're absolutely right. I don't deserve your money and don't deserve to manage your portfolio. So that's the intersection of where Kairos, the opportunity, meets Chronos. Now you may not know this one. This is what I would call an everyday person. Ingrid Fournier this came from, I think AARP. This is from one of their newsletters. As soon as I saw that, this is relatively new. I think came out earlier this year. As soon as I saw this, I'm like, oh, this is an example of Kairos time that I'm going to share with people. So for 26 years, Ingrid taught K through 8 grades near Grand Rapids, Michigan. So it was wonderful. I had a great experience, but COVID hit. And like for most people, and this is a whole other presentation, there was a lot of, since there was such a national emergency, a declaration of people being in their homes, people spent a lot of times with themselves. And it was, a great deal of self-discovery accidentally. That's what I was trying to say. So people explored themselves accidentally because they weren't allowed to go outside and interact with people. I mean, they did it over Zoom, but they still had time by themselves inside. And so Ingrid and her husband said, we're kind of tired, right? Like, and as many people said, they changed jobs. Millions of people changed jobs. They moved during COVID. They had a moment in time. They had Chronos stopped for a lot of people, and they assessed their Kairos, even though they may not have known what they were doing. And they realized they didn't want to be in the rat race anymore. They didn't want to spend all this time, commuting to and from work every day. They wanted more Kairos time with their family, with their partner, with their spouse, with their children, whatever the case was. And so she was 5 years away. Ingrid was 5 years away from being fully vested in retirement. And she and her husband quit. I hear this all the time, especially from like state workers or people, that are a couple years away, like from being fully vested. And sometimes they're 10 years away. And they tell me, oh, I just got 10 more years and I can retire. And if they're a friend of mine or they trust me, I'm like, wait, you're basically throwing 10 years of Kairos out the window. And then I have to explain what all that means. And they're just going to be unhappy for 10 years just to get that, pension, and how many times do those people die in year 9, right? They don't even get it. So what Ingrid did, and they were lucky they could afford to do it, she said, I had 5 more years until I would have been completely vested, but it wasn't good for me mentally. We were lucky enough to be in a position that we could just say, we're done. And they did, but they didn't stop working. See, here's the key. This is what happened during COVID. Being forced to spend time inside allowed people to reflect upon their life and touch upon Kairos. And she said, well, I really like working. I just don't want to be teaching anymore. So she found the job at a public library that was tangential to the work that she was doing. So sometimes, like if this happens, when this happens? Kairos being thrust upon you is often the result of when like someone close to you dies, right? Jackson Brown, if for those of you that are old enough to know Jackson Brown, the significant artist of the 70s, 80s, and 90s, he has a line in a song. It said, like, why does it take a death to learn what a life is worth? And so when people died that were very close to him, when my father died, when my mother died, you then question your own mortality, right? You have an existential crisis. What you're really doing is you're investigating your relationship with Kairos time. That's exactly what you're doing, right? And so you then shift from, okay, I know what I'm doing at 6:30, 7:30, whatever, but how do you want to leverage not the rest of your life? That's too grandiose. It's too overwhelming. It's too unrealistic. But really what you want to say is, well, how can I leverage Kairos a little bit more than I am? Am I leveraging Kairos at all, in fact? And so the next case study, really just Jennifer Esposito really helps us understand this where the intersection of personal and professional comes in. So I highly recommend you watch. This is a fantastic movie, Fresh Kills. It is a mafia movie viewed from the perspective of women. I mean, there's some men in it, but all the men are secondary characters. This is a movie about women in a family situation linked to the mafia. And it's the first one that I think that's ever been done like this. Jennifer Esposito mortgaged her house to fund Fresh Kills. People always say, you should never use your own money. Well, for those that understand Kairos, you put up whatever you can to translate your dream into reality. So she was trying to make this for 15 years. No one would support her. Or more importantly, the men ahead of the studios would not support her. It won all these awards. I watched it when it came out in June. Great story, great acting, amazing acting. And I haven't checked in on the sales recently, and I hope, it's doing well enough that she makes her money back. And so here's her quote, right? And I'm such a nerd when I see these quotes and I interject them into the presentations because I'm like, oh, this is Kairos. This is her understanding the essence of Kairos. This town, Hollywood, tells you what you can be and what you can't be for so many years. I was just so over that. She let go of the arrow. She was holding on to the arrow. Oh, I can't be I can't be this, I can't be that. Holding on to the arrow. She said, no, I'm done. You release the arrow when you've had enough, right? I was just so over that. And I thought, why am I asking the world to believe in me? I have to believe in me, right? There's a whole workshop on that. So I'm going to put my money down at the end of my life. Am I going to be so happy that my house was paid off? Or am I going to be so happy that I gave myself the opportunity that I've been waiting for far too long? I've met people like, oh my God, I got to pay off my house. That's wonderful. Go. Wonderful for you to do that. Jennifer Esposito said, but wait a minute. Isn't there another question I should be asking? Am I going to be so happy that I gave myself the opportunity that I've been waiting for far too long? She didn't do it recklessly, right? She did it in a mature, professional, responsible way. There's calculated risk and there's dumb risk. This was not a dumb risk. This was a calculated risk. And when you're an adult, you understand the difference between a stupid risk and a calculated risk, and that you give yourself the opportunity. Right? In other words, she understood the essence of Kairos, when to let it go. She said, I'm done. I'm letting go of the arrow. I'm going to take a shot and make my own movie. So here are some self-reflection exercises. So I'm going to give you a series of questions, and you'll see these again, and it might be a little bit challenging for you to write them all down and reflect upon them. I would challenge you to reflect on all these questions. How well do you manage your Chronos time? Who would you like to manage your Chronos time better? I mean, most people would say yes, right? I mean, even I would. What are you willing to do to improve how you spend your Chronos time? And that's a little bit more of a challenging question. And I get it. I hear it all the time. Yeah, but Michael, I have kids. I got a spouse. I got parents I care for. Yes, I've been there. I understand. My mother-in-law lived with me for 25 years before she passed. I lived next door to my parents. It was everyone loves Michael. I mean, everyone's loved Raymond, but it was like everyone loves Michael. I get it. So when you're answering these questions and all I'm hearing is excuse, 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 I know that the Kairos questions aren't going to hold any water for you because you can't even get over the Chronos. So that's the left side of this is easy. So these are the more challenging questions. What does knowing about Kairos do to your perception of time? Now, if you're older, you may have let some of those arrows go, like Jennifer Esposito. Maybe you didn't know it was Kairos, but now you do. So now that you know about Kairos, what does it do to your perception of time? What Kairos moments are you struggling with right now? Are you not getting enough of deep time with someone in your life? That's an important question to ask. Are there some Kairos moments you're struggling with right now? Right? And you got to find a way to answer that. Again, we got to work hard at hard work. I'm not saying any of this is easy. And then finally, what can you do to improve your ability to leverage Kairos to more fully celebrate being human? Now, again, think back of the characteristics, right? You have to have grit. You have to be resilient. You have to be courageous. So then you have to look at your relationship with those. So what can you do to improve your ability to leverage Kairos to more fully celebrate being human? That also begs another question. How often do you fully celebrate being human? I don't know. Do you ever celebrate being human? I don't know. In my oral presentation class Tuesday night, and I hammer into them. You are able to use words. Lots of animals communicate. Whales communicate to each other. So do dolphins, dogs, birds. Lots of animals communicate to each other, but humans have words. With the words coming out of your mouth dictate how you think about yourself, how other people see you, and your relationships, right? So, in other words, it indicates your level of humanity. And how often do you think about that? The next book that I would recommend is The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying by Bronnie Ware, an Australian hospice nurse who spent a lot of time caring for hundreds of people as they passed. And what was fascinating is she took notes and she said, these are the 5 regrets of the dying. And none of this should be a surprise to any of you. You're all smart people. I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me. I give this talk to my students all the time. There's a saying that every college student has 2 majors, the one their parents want them to have and the one they want to have. So we do a lot of that exploration. 2, I wish I hadn't worked so hard. Work as hard as you want, but it's going to impact your Kairos time. I wish I had the courage to express my feelings. I was like that, and then no, I'm no longer. Usually gets me in trouble sometimes. I wish I had stayed in touch with my friends. You can more easily do this now with social media. It does. I'm in touch with so many of my high school friends on that outdated social media platform the kids call Facebook. And then I wish I let myself be happier. Ultimately, once you're mature enough, you realize happiness is a choice and you choose to be happy. That's very hard work. That's very hard work. So here are some questions, right? As we look at Chronos and Kairos, do I want to have the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me? What aspect of time plays into this? Is this Kairos time or Chronos time? And you have to explore it. I mean, this is not something that, again, we can do, in a quick, hour presentation. Do I want to have the courage? Do I want to have the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me? I can't answer. Like generally all I do in all my talks is I ask questions. I'm not going to really tell you much. I told you some of the latest research. Okay. but I'm not going to tell you what to do. And then ultimately, there are way too many workshops and learning opportunities where you're told what to do. It's your life. You do what you choose to do. I just hope you're kind to yourself and others. But ultimately, it's your life. I'm just going to be here to ask questions. And if you engage in these questions, then you're engaging in self-care and increasing the level of self-awareness you need to leverage Kairos, with the assumption that you're leveraging Chronos pretty well. Am I working too hard? I don't know. I don't know. I have a whole set of slides on why the 40-hour work week and all the research is, oh, I have plenty of research here. Working more than 40 hours a week, actually working more than like 30 hours a week, doesn't really increase productivity any substantial degree. It just doesn't. And then you have to ask yourself, well, how long can I work this hard? You know, when I was in my 20s, I had gotten married. Everyone said it would take forever to have children. It did not. We had our kids right away. Woohoo. I'm in grad school in the PhD program at Temple, and I'm working full time. And there were two years in a row, I didn't watch any TV. Forget TV. I'm still watching Law and Order from the 90s today. I wound up in the ER both Christmases. I don't even know what years they were, but I just ran myself ragged for 350 days and then collapsed. And after the second time, I got scared and said, okay, I am pushing myself way too much and something's got to give. And so I was working too hard. Yeah, I know. I know what that's like. I have saw the physical manifestation of that. And you got to ask yourself, is that how you want to live your life? I can't answer that. Do I have the courage to express my feelings? That's Kairos time. Are you setting the Chronos time aside so that you can let go of the arrow and tell someone how you feel? I love you. I'm having some difficulty here understanding what's going on. You got to let go of that arrow, but that takes courage, right? It takes courage. So do you have the courage? Notice how courage comes back, right? It's in the first question. It's in this third question. And remember, it was earlier in the presentation. It was one of the characteristics. How courageous are you? And if you're not, that's okay. You can work on it. Am I staying in touch with my friends as much as I would like to? You saw the time chart. You saw the research. 40 onward. 40 onward. Generally speaking, 50% of Americans are alone. They are alone. You can extrapolate and say they don't really have any friends. It's really sad. It's really sad. So something to consider. And then finally, do I allow myself to be as happy as much as possible? Happiness is a choice. It's not a result of your life situation. It is a choice. And at the end of the day, what I want you to ask yourself is, how can you better leverage Chronos and Kairos in order to avoid experiencing one of the 5 regrets of the dying? Because I'm making the assumption that you don't want to experience the 5 regrets of the dying, right? You want to make sure you have a life that's true to yourself, that you're not working too hard, that you do express your feelings, that you do stay in touch with your friends, and most importantly, perhaps, you do allow yourself to be happy. And you allow yourself to be happy when you emphasize Kairos and give yourself the opportunities for deep time that is immeasurable, that you have access to if you were just to perhaps view your life differently. And I hope that is the takeaway from today. You have my email, michael.edmondson, or the URL for the LDI is ldi.njit.edu. I'm on LinkedIn. Please feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn. I am always happy to talk to NJT alumni afterwards. And I thank you for your time. We can open it up. I know it's 12:51. I always want to leave some time for questions.